for some of us, especially me, a business to business brand, I want social media to be the beginning of that relationship, but I want to kind of, draw them in and take it down the road because just naturally my business model, et cetera, et cetera. I would love to start with them on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, but that's not where I want it to finish. And there's a lot of conversation about this kind of shared media space and then trying to convert them into co-owned space like podcasts or YouTubes where you're working with a platform, but then it's all your content, your show, your programming. And then you go even further to completely owned space like a website or a store or a mailing relationship or email newsletters, whatever. What are some things that we could take into consideration as we're coming up with strategies and plans to use social media as a front part of that relationship and start to draw them in closer and closer to owned media?
Yeah, so that model is basically a digital sales funnel, what you described. So, you get a lot of kind of useful, but not too useful content out on social media. And I've actually done this before with people. You utilize paid ads and you offer people something that is, free, like an ebook or something, or like a help me, what is the word?
A guide, or it could be like some kind of complimentary
No,
device.
the help me, please edit this part out. It's the not a podcast.
White paper?
Webinar.
A webinar. Yeah.
So
Okay.
you
Yeah.
use something, you utilize a social media ad to get people to something where you promise to give them more information, right? So,
but it's behind a gateway.
Yeah, exactly. So that gateway is going to be some sort of digital currency. Typically, it's their email address where they have to confirm their email address, then make sure it's a valid, legit email address to then gain access to the webinar or the course or what have you. And then you take them to that webinar, you give them just enough information, but not enough so they actually learn something of value. And then you have them kind of in this next level of the funnel where you're able to send them emails like, hey, if you like that webinar, here's a paid course, or here's my YouTube channel. Here's more things here. Maybe your YouTube channel is monetized. Maybe you want them to subscribe so that you can sell ads through YouTube, or maybe you're trying to sell them a course that's $49.99 or something, but you tell them it costs $800, but you're willing to sell it to them for $40, and they're like, oh, what a bargain. Meanwhile, if you were just like, hey, it's $40, they're like, oh, that's too expensive. So
you give them a sample to make them hungry for more.
It's like when you go to the mall food court, like we used to do back in the day, and the people give you the little toothpick with a piece of bourbon chicken on it, and you're like, hot damn, that is good. I want a whole pile of that, and I want some lo mein, and I want an egg roll. And you go and you convert to a customer. It's exactly the same thing, just in the digital sphere. And social media, that broad social media reach where your CPI, your cost per impression, is relatively low. If you do a good job building your ad, you're able to cast that really wide net where you get people to move down into the funnel and become a paying customer, or maybe someone who really wants to engage with you and becomes a really big fan of your brand. Because if you're doing it correctly, that should be the end goal. It's not only just to make sales, but to get people that are very enthusiastic about your brand and willing to tell people about it and post their own good experience on social media and become little brand ambassadors out there, just doing the Lord's work for you.
That's right. Would you recommend mapping out that journey on the before you start going down the road of ads and all? Yeah. So you need to have the flow already pre-thought out.
Yes, you need to have the entire plan, start to finish, just ready to go before you even think about anything. Like, think about what your end game is, what you want people to buy, or like what you want them to do. Do you want them to subscribe to your channel? Do you want them to become a consistent loyal viewer? Do you want them to buy a tangible item? Do you want them to subscribe to a course? Do you want them to, whatever you want them to do, think about that. And then start working backwards. Like, how are you going to get that? And also think about how you're going to get people that kind of start to fall out your funnel. So maybe you get someone on a social media ad, they move down into the next layer, they give you their email address, you have their verified email address, they go to your webinar, and they're like, this person's full of dookie. I don't want to subscribe to their channel. So then you think about those people, you stick them in their own little funnel of people that kind of fell out of your original funnel, and you're like, hey, let's see if we can rekindle or save this relationship. what if I offer you this? And they're like, okay, well, maybe. And you just
Right.
have to think about all of the possible scenarios that people could, maybe people don't follow that exact path. What are the other paths they could fall into?
Yeah. The
And how can
branches.
you also lead those down to the
Yeah.
end game too? And
Yeah.
sometimes those people take a little bit more work. And then there's a place where it takes more work than the customer's worth, and you just kind of let them go about their merry way and go somewhere else as people aren't your customer.
Right.
Um, but it's very important to literally get a giant piece of paper and draw
Okay.
it out and get post-it
Okay.
notes and just start moving the post-it notes around until you find something that makes sense and you've got every possible scenario outlined. I mean, there's still people will surprise you because people are people and that's what they do. But think about all the possible scenarios that could happen and just have all those mapped out. Have an answer to everything. And that
Okay.
kind of helps if you have kind of I don't have really a sales background, but people who have a sales background are very good at coming up with an answer to every objection.
Mhm.
And that's really something that you have to do is think about all of the reasons why somebody would choose not to do something and have an answer for it and be ready to send out that message and don't be bashful about circling back with people. I'm not
Yep.
saying you should annoy people into doing what you want them to do, although that does seem to be a path that some marketers choose to utilize.
Follow up is the key, right? There's every seeing a one-time pop-up ad on your social media stream. Those companies are gonna be a dime a dozen, but it's the ones that have really thought through the psychology of the people that they want to have a relationship with. They're going to have a flow. They're going to pre-thought out and put on their skeptic's hat and think about all the reasons that you wouldn't want to engage with them or buy from them. They're going to thought it out and they're going to keep on reaching out to you, having that in mind. And guess what? It's going to stick out to you because that's how they stick out through a place like social media, as they've already thought out the flow of how to build that relationship.
Yeah, and they're going to have really well targeted like retargeting campaigns so they can follow you around the internet with just continuing to bless you with their information. So, it's very well thought out plans before you even start to execute anything. Don't be like, "Oh, I'm just going to mess around with this." No. Plan it out, then do it.
Yeah.